Hi, my name is Emily Roberts, and I'm just your average 28-year-old woman from Chicago. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been obsessed with baking and cooking up delicious treats in the kitchen. It was like therapy for me, measuring, mixing, getting my hands dirty. Watching something go from a bunch of basic ingredients to a mouth-watering pastry or cake was pure magic. After high school, the obvious choice was attending culinary school to become a professional pastry chef. My parents didn't have much money, so I worked my butt off at a diner throughout those years, but it was worth it when I landed my dream job at Delilah's Bakery right after graduating. I started out at minimum wage, working insane hours, but I busted my ass and became one of Delilah's star bakers in just a couple years. It was during one of my bakery shifts that I met Tom Anderson, an account executive for a software company. He came in one morning looking tired as hell. "Mornin' darlin', the usual?" I chirped over the counter. Tom just grunted and slid a $20 across. "Surprise me with something good, sweetheart. Sales been kicking my ass this week." Since Tom looked like he needed a pick-me-up, I hooked him up with an extra-large banana bread loaf, my specialty. "On the house, hon, everyone needs a little treat now and then." The guy looked stunned. "Wow, thank you. You're an angel." He tore off a chunk and his eyes rolled back. "Oh my God, this is insane. You made this?" I blushed. Guilty as charged. Just a little banana bread to brighten your day. Well, consider my day bright, beautiful. I'm Tom Anderson. That's how we met, me slinging pastries and him being a regular customer who always left me the nicest compliments. We got to know each other more over the following weeks, flirted shamelessly, and he eventually worked up the nerve to ask me out on a real date. The rest was history. We dated for 2 years before Tom finally proposed. I was over the moon. This guy deeply appreciated my culinary talents and had fallen for the real me. Well, perfect except for one thing. Tom's mother Jane was a nightmare from the first time I met her. She looked me up and down like I was a cockroach when Tom brought me over for Sunday dinner. "Ma, this is my girlfriend Emily." "Emily, this is my mom Jane," Tom said, putting his arm around me. Jane's thin lips pursed as she gave me an obvious once-over. "A pastry chef? That's interesting." She said it like she was trying not to gag. "Yes ma'am, I work at Delilah's Bakery downtown." "Tom says you've tried my banana bread before?" I tried to be friendly with an outstretched hand. Jane just stared at my hand like it was diseased, before turning up her nose. I didn't realize that was made by the pastry girl at the counter. I just assumed Delilah made everything herself. That was it, the claws came out from this evil old harpy on our very first meeting. I wanted to slap her and storm out, but Tom kept me calm, whispering that his mom was just little rough and to give her a chance. After getting married, I decided it was time to take my passion for baking to the next level. So I quit and got licensed to operate a home bakery business. "Oh, how adorable, you're playing kid chef again." Jane cackled. "I give it 6 months before the oven mitt comes off and reality sets in, sweet cheeks." Tom cut in, putting his hand on my arm. "Lay off her, Ma. Emily's worked her tail off to get here, she's got a real entrepreneurial spirit." "Oh, I'm terrified." Jane threw her hands up mockingly. The great queen of cupcakes is finally branching out from behind that bakery counter cash register. What an inspirational, gutsy career move. My face burned, but I kept my cool. "Thank you for that stunning vote of confidence. I appreciate your support as I follow my dreams. But you know what? Spite can be an incredible motivator." So as the months rolled on, I baked and baked my little heart out, taking custom orders through word of mouth and social media. Jane constantly ragged on me about playing make-believe as a baker. But orders and 5-star reviews from clients started rolling in like crazy. I had a true knack for crafting gorgeous custom cakes, cookies, pastries, you name it. "Have you seen the latest for Emily's Eats?" Tom gushed one night over dinner, scrolling through my Instagram feed. "This girl is incredible. Her croissant cereal treats are blowing up." Jane shot me a withering look over her glass of wine. Well, isn't that wonderful, dear? Getting those internet likes must be very validating. Although I'm not quite sure how viable a business based on baked goods photo shoots can really be. Things only got more tense as my home bakery grew. Jane seemingly took personal offense to my hustle and grind as Emily's Eats blew up. Somebody ordered a 2-tier salted caramel cake for a wedding in Lincoln Park this weekend. I excitedly showed Tom the order one evening. This could be my big break to get into the Chicago event space. Jane snorted from the couch. Oh, how wonderful, sweetie. A locally catered cake for a couple of yuppies' nuptials. You'll really make it big with jobs like that. Better yuppie nuptials than nitpicking and nagging all day, like some miserable gossips I know. I fired back, losing my cool. Jane looked ready to swing before Tom stepped in. All right, that's enough from both of you. Mom, stop crapping on Emily's dream before it even gets off the ground. And you. He shot me a look. Don't let her jabs get you riled up. This is your passion we're talking about. He was right. Every time I got flustered arguing with that wretched woman, I got sloppier in the kitchen. And I couldn't afford any mistakes, not when I was pouring every ounce of energy into making Emily's Eats a success. One day, I got a huge order from one of my regular customers, Mrs. Wilkins. She wanted a big fancy cake and like 50 assorted pastries for some corporate shindig at her husband's office. This was a massive deal for my little home bakery business. Listen up, Emily, Mrs. Wilkins said in that no-nonsense tone of hers. This order needs to be absolutely perfect, you hear? We're talking the biggest wigs at my Richards company. If this goes well, you can bet your sweet behind I'll be referring you to all my high society friends. For the next few days, I worked myself to the bone prepping for Mrs. Wilkins' huge order. I wanted to craft a showstopper cake with elegant piped rosettes and handmade gum paste flowers. And the pastries had to be delicious little works of art. The morning I was supposed to deliver everything, I was a bundle of nerves. But I had baked and decorated each item with care, checking them over 1,000,000 times for any imperfections. By 10 a.m., I had it all packaged up and looking like a dream. That's when Jane barged in, ruining my flow. There you are, lazybones. I need you to run to the post office right this minute. She shoved a shipping label in my face. I ordered something special online and it requires a signature. I groaned in frustration. Are you serious? I'm literally about to head out with this massive order I've been working on for days. The only words I should be hearing from you are why yes, Mother Jane, I'll be happy to run your errand right away. Jane waggled her bony finger at me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to Jane's stupid demand just to get her out of my face. She gave me a sickly sweet smile as I grabbed my purse. Wonderful, that's a good girl. Now hurry along and I'll make sure your little baked nothings get delivered safely while you're out. Something about her tone raised red flags, but I was too frazzled to think much of it. I figured Jane was just being her usual awful self, condescending my business as always. When I got home, Jane said with a grin she had given the cakes and pastries to the courier. 2 days later, I got a call from the furious client, Mr. Wilkins himself. What in the goddamn hell were those inedible monstrosities you tried to pass off as pastries, Emily? He shouted so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Sir, I don't understand. This has to be some mistake. I was openly weeping at this point, all my hard work and biggest chance at success crumbling around me. I followed all the instructions to a T, perfectly tempering the chocolate, using fresh ingredients. Please let me make this right. You're damn right you'll be making this right by refunding me every cent and removing any association with my company from your cheap little website and socials. With that, he hung up, leaving me a sobbing, hysterical mess on the kitchen floor. Over the next few months, my budding home bakery business completely withered and died thanks to the horrific reviews from the Wilkins disaster. Jane, meanwhile, watched the fallout with glee. Well, isn't this just a shame? She crooned one evening as I sat despondently scrolling through the scathing online comments about my former business. Although I can't say I'm terribly surprised. I warned you not to get your hopes up too high with this cute little baking fantasy. Baking had always been my biggest passion, and having it ruthlessly mocked by Jane made the failure that much more devastating. For a while, I just stopped getting in the kitchen altogether. "Come on, babe, you can't let that witch get you down like this," Tom pleaded one night as I laid on the couch, staring off blankly. "Baking is your calling, don't let my mom's nasty comments make you give up on your dream." His pep talk actually gave me an idea. Maybe I could start doing baking tutorials and tips videos online to remind people how skilled I was. I spent the next few months throwing myself into cultivating an audience on Instagram, YouTube, you name it. I filmed step-by-step guides to my favorite recipes, shared baking hacks I'd learned over the years, and did calming videos just doing things like piping frosting decorations. To my surprise, people actually started tuning in and engaging with my content in a big way. Eventually, my follower counts on the various platforms started growing exponentially. "Damn it, Emily," Tom beamed one night, looking at my YouTube stats. "You just hit 100,000 subscribers. That's insane." Just then, Jane came shuffling into the room, wrinkling her nose at Tom and I smiling over my laptop. "What's got you two grinning like idiots?" Jane snapped. "Don't tell me your baked goods cart finally made it onto the evening news." I rolled my eyes. If you must know, my baking tutorial videos online are getting wildly popular. I just hit over 100,000 subscribers. Jane's face instantly soured into a frown. "Is that so? How delightful." The sarcasm dripped from her voice. "Wasting all your time baking again for strangers on the internet to gawk at, I see." "It's not just wasting time, Jane," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "I've built a real following of people who appreciate my skills and knowledge. This whole thing could lead to amazing opportunities down the road." "Oh, like what?" Jane scoffed. "Getting your own public access television show? Maybe a baking blog no one reads? Shall I start setting aside money for your future unemployment now or later?" I fought the urge to cry as Jane laughed coldly, clearly threatened by my small restart towards pursuing my passion again. No matter how much I accomplished, she always found words that hit me hard. One day, I bumped into an old friend, Jenna, who I went to culinary school with years ago. She looked just as bright and bubbly as always. "Well, I'll be darned if it isn't Emily Roberts," Jenna gushed, pulling me into a big hug. "Girl, it's been ages. How the heck are you?" "Jenna, hey. Wow, yeah, it really has been too long," I said, returning her warm embrace. "I'm doing okay, you know, keeping busy with my at-home baking business and all." Jenna's eyes went wide with recognition. "No way, you're Emily's Eats? The baking blog with all those gorgeous dessert tutorials that's blown up lately?" I gave an embarrassed shrug. "Huh, yeah, that's me. I do love baking up a storm for my little online audience." Speaking of which, Jenna adopted a more pensive look. "Emily, you've got to come be a guest on my cooking show. We've got a slot open for a baking demo in next week's episode." I tried to mask my giddiness, shuffling my feet coyly. "Well gosh, if you really think making a cameo could help grow my brand, then I'd be honored." We exchanged contacts so Jenna's crew could send over the show deets. As I headed home, my head was still spinning at this shocking stroke of good luck. Me, baking live on TV? Could this opportunity get any more perfect to rehab my reputation after the Wilkins fiasco? When I filled Tom in over dinner, he matched my level of excitement. "Damn it, that's insane. My girl, baking it up on live TV, talk about the ultimate comeback." I swatted him playfully. "Oh stop, I'm sure it won't be that big a deal. Just a little guest spot to get some extra exposure, nothing crazy." But of course, Jane had to come sweeping in with her signature negativity to burst my bubble. "What's all this nonsense I hear about you being on the television, baking like a circus monkey for housewives to gawk at?" I rolled my eyes. "Jane, must you always diminish everything positive in my life? This is a huge opportunity for great exposure for my home baking business." Jane simply tittered mockingly before turning businesslike. Yes, yes, that's all well and good. Now about getting me and Tom audience tickets. My eyes boggled. I'm sorry, what? You want tickets to come watch the taping? Well, of course, Jane said in a tone like she was explaining something to a small child. I've been dying for a chance to appear on television myself for ages, even if just as an extra in the crowd. After some browbeating, I eventually gave in to Jane's insufferable demands and called up Jenna to ask for a couple of audience passes, figuring it would be easier than dealing with the old hag's tantrum over being denied. Thanks so much for this. My whole crew is stoked to have you, Jenna gushed when I arrived at the studio the day of taping. She ushered me over to the kitchen set area where high-definition cameras were set up around the blazing hot lights of the instructional cooking station. When we go live in 3 hours, you'll be baking up your famous salted caramel apple pie and a platter of those drool-worthy lemon cupcakes you always post. While I got glammed up for my big television debut, Jane and Tom got seated in the front row of the studio audience per Jane's insistent demands. Part of me was relieved to have their familiar faces there to lean on. The other part knew Jane would find some way to undermine or sabotage me yet again out of her usual jealousy and resentment. After that, I headed into the kitchen area to do some practice runs for my baking demo. I wanted to get the motions and plating down perfectly before going live. The pies and cupcakes I prepped looked downright mouth-watering, hopefully a good sign. After one last check of each dish, the director announced a brief break before going live. I took the opportunity to use the restroom and gather my nerves before the big moment. But when I got back to the kitchen set, Jenna was waiting with a concerned look on her face. Hey, sorry to bug you before we go live, but you'll never believe this. Our stage manager noticed your mother-in-law snooping around your workspace a few minutes ago. A wave of dread and panic washed over me as I rushed to examine the workspace. Jenna was right, some of my prepped ingredients had clearly been moved around. I couldn't believe Jane would stoop this low, sabotaging my big television debut by deliberately replacing my ingredients. Hot, angry tears sprang to my eyes as Jenna pulled me into a comforting hug. Hey, it's okay, we'll just get you fresh ingredients, no sweat, she murmured softly, stroking my back. Everything's gonna be fine, I promise. Jenna quickly summoned a production assistant to race out and purchase all new baking supplies from a nearby store while I tried to collect myself. I could feel Jane's smug leer burning into the back of my head from her front row audience seat. When the new, untainted ingredients finally arrived, it was time to go live. I took a few deep, calming breaths and stepped up to the cooking area, my face set in grim determination. As I got to work whipping up the salted caramel apple pie and lemon cupcake batters, I made sure to narrate each step for the viewers at home. Jenna chimed in occasionally with encouraging words about my impeccable technique. Just look at Emily's precise piping work on those cupcake swirls, folks. TV perfect if I've ever seen it. After what felt like no time at all, it was the big moment. Jenna welcomed a panel of audience members up to sample my creations live on air. I felt my heart pounding as the first taste tester, a middle-aged woman, politely took a bite of the salted caramel apple pie. I searched her face for any hint of reaction, positive or negative. The woman's eyes suddenly went wide, seemingly in surprise. Oh my, this is just heavenly! She exclaimed once she finally swallowed the bite. That perfect crumbly yet flaky crust, the zing of the salted caramel, good lord, it's like a flavor explosion. A giddy smile broke out across my face as the other samplers voiced similar oohs and ahs of delight at each bite. Jenna shot me a big wink and double thumbs up, clearly ecstatic her secret weapon baking guest was knocking it out of the park. I snuck a peek at Jane out in the front row, absolutely seething with her arms crossed tightly. Good, let that wretched, bitter old crone sit and stew for once, watching my success happen right in front of her hateful eyes. As the polite clapping died down, Jenna took center stage with a devilish grin. Well folks, I think we can all agree Emily's baking is, indeed, out of this world incredible. But, what if I told you our miraculous pastry wizard overcame a last-minute act of sabotage just to dazzle us here today? The audience let out a collective murmur of confusion. A large screen behind Jenna and I flickered to life, displaying security cam footage from earlier that morning. We watched in silence as Jane's hunched figure snuck up to my prepped workstation, looked around furtively, then proceeded to open various containers and jars, seemingly tampering with their contents. The video cut out as a deafening hush fell over the studio audience. Everyone instinctively turned to gawk at Jane sitting frozen in her front row. Finally, the silence was broken by Tom, my sweet, supportive husband, suddenly standing up and bellowing at the top of his lungs. "Enough, Mother! How dare you try sabotaging Emily's big break out of your own pathetic jealousy? I'm so sorry, baby." Tom turned to me with tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry. I never saw her toxic, abusive behavior for what it was sooner. You never deserved any of her gaslighting, manipulative behavior." The cameras panned over to Jane, absolutely pallid and shrinking into her seat in horror, as Jenna offered her the microphone and asked if she'd care to explain her sabotaging actions. For a moment, Jane just sat there frozen, silently opening and closing her mouth. But when she finally did speak, it was with a scathing venom. "You smug, ungrateful little thing." She spat out the insult directly at me, causing the audience to gasp in shock. "You think your cute little baking hobby makes you so special, huh? That this is the big break that finally earns you some undeserved self-respect?" Jane let out a high, deranged cackle. "Well, I've got a wake-up call for you, Missy. It was me who ruined that all-important catered lunch that destroyed your pathetic business. Me. From the very start, all I've dreamed of was destroying you, your disgusting baking career, your undeserved relationship with my son, everything." Seeing Jane unravel completely into her true, unfiltered toxic self was bone-chilling. She turned her furious glare directly into the camera lens, screaming with heightened mania. "I won't let this nothing, this lazy, slovenly chef wannabe, tarnish the honor of being married into the Anderson family name any longer with her sham baking act. You hear me, Emily? I'll destroy you if it's the last thing I dash." Suddenly, Jane's hate-filled tirade was cut short by a loud thud, as Tom had charged from his seat and full-on knocked the microphone out of her hands, leaving the audiences shrieking in shock. Thereafter, Tom pulled me into a loving embrace as the audience roared their approval. I buried my face in his chest, alternating between sobs of joy and disbelief at how everything had unfolded. That TV appearance was a total game-changer for my life and career. Turns out, people just can't get enough of baking drama mixed with unhinged family meltdowns. Jenna's baking show scored its highest ratings ever from all the insanity that went down. TV bloggers and reviewers raved about what an unscripted television milestone it was. Clips from the episode, particularly Jane's deranged rant where she admitted sabotaging me, went viral almost instantly. Overnight, I became known as the long-suffering baking blogger who finally stood up to her evil mother-in-law from hell. It was honestly overwhelming, my little online baking tips channel getting that much mainstream exposure. Dude, this is nuts. I've already gained like 200,000 new YouTube subscribers just from that TV fiasco. I showed Tom the numbers a few days later, still in disbelief. Brands started hitting me up about sponsorship opportunities. Television talent scouts DM'd about potentially hosting my own show someday. It was a wildly surreal experience being lifted up in the aftermath of what had been one of the most traumatizing, horrific days of my life. Is this really happening? I marveled aloud while reading a lucrative sponsorship offer out loud to Tom one night over glasses of celebratory wine. Am I actually a full-on celebrity baker now? Tom grinned and clinked my glass. You're damn right, baby. And you earned every ounce of it with your crazy talent and mental toughness to endure all this from you-know-who for so long. I felt myself blush at the high praise. Looking back, maybe all that torment had been a blessing in disguise. The thing that truly compelled me to hone my craft with laser focus, while simultaneously developing the thick skin needed to endure hurtful critics and naysayers. Jane had been the ultimate naysayer, and I had still managed to make my baking dream a success in spite of her. As for Jane herself, let's just say between the public humiliation of having her abusive behavior exposed so rawly, and Tom completely cutting her out of our lives, she ended up retreating back to whatever sad little hell dimension she crawled out of. Without so much as a text or call from her, we quietly packed up and moved out of the home to completely cut ties. We found a beautiful new place we could truly make our own, splurging on upgrades here and there thanks to my booming influencer income.
And I didn't give it a second thought. The next morning, while I was preparing breakfast, Mason came into the kitchen. "Good morning," I greeted him cheerfully. Mason glanced at me, grabbed some milk from the fridge, and left without a word. I was a bit surprised by his coldness. It wasn't like him. Seems like he's still in a bad mood. I never thought I'd see the day. I'm aware that we were a family of strong, independent individuals. I hadn't made a point to talk to Mason, really. I decided to wait and see. So I continued prepping lunchboxes for both Mason and myself. However, things didn't go back to normal that easily. Mason remained distant the following night and the day after. At this point, I was genuinely concerned. Days turned into weeks and Mason continued to give me the silent treatment. I tried reaching out through WhatsApp and even left him notes, but he ignored it all. However, he'd eat the meals I prepared. I noticed the empty lunchbox in the sink, so I knew he ate the packed lunch. So I put a note in the cooler bag. I thought if he found a note while enjoying the lunch I made with love, he'd have to react. But that was another miss. Mason said nothing. Before I knew it, over a month had passed in this strange silence. I felt helpless. I had tried everything, but nothing worked. Then one evening, I took a drastic step. I deliberately didn't prepare dinner. Every evening, I made dinner when I got home. But what if I didn't? How would Mason, who's been ignoring me, react? I decided to find out. But when Mason came home, I pretended to be watching TV in the living room. Mason came into the living room and looked intently at the table where dinner usually waited, but tonight the table was empty. After looking at the barren table, Mason turned his gaze to me. Holding my breath, I waited for him to say something, but he walked out of the living room in complete silence. I heard the front door open and shut with a bang. I was stunned. Why am I being ignored like this? I had no idea why. I was left bewildered, sitting alone on the living room couch. The next morning, I woke up and went to the living room. Mason was already gone. Did he go to work already? Curious, I looked on the living room table and found a note. Reading the words on it, my eyes went wide. "Stop skipping out on your wifely duties," it read, scribbled hastily in a messy handwriting. Something inside me snapped. That's it. I'm done. Why do I have to keep pleasing Mason? Is this going to be my life forever? We were never a clingy couple, but this is just unacceptable. And there's no reason for him to do this, nor an opportunity for me to even ask about it. For the last month, the stifling silence in the house has been unbearable. I wrote next to Mason's scribble, "I'm going back to my parents' house." I quickly packed up my things and went home. My sudden arrival did surprise my parents, but after I explained how Mason had been ignoring me for over a month without any apparent reason, they understood and welcomed me warmly. It felt good to be in an environment where I could have a normal conversation. For now, I decided to stay here and see how Mason reacts before deciding on my next steps. I didn't hear from Mason the day I left. Knowing him, he's probably assuming I'm just trying to make a point and will continue to ignore me. Well, let's see how long this lasts. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no call or message from Mason via WhatsApp or any other means. He didn't even bother to visit my parents' house. Before I knew it, half a year had passed. I had nearly forgotten about Mason altogether. Then, one day, as I was leaving my parents' house to go shopping, there he was. Mason, standing with a defiant and angry expression. I was shocked and froze in my tracks. Mason just glared at me, still not saying a word. Is this game still going on? It was almost laughable how silent Mason was. But then, in the next moment, he tried to walk into my parents' house without saying a word. Whoa, hold on there. I stopped him. Mason looked at me, his face a mix of anger and disbelief, but still silent. I warned. I said, don't just walk in. I will call the police. Finally, after more than 6 months, Mason spoke. a snide smile on his lips. Look at you, getting all uppity with me? Since when do you get so high and mighty? Just because you're at your parents' house doesn't mean you can act like that, you know? I remember Mason being a bit rough around the edges, but not like this. Lost in thought, I was jolted back to reality when Mason suddenly erupted. What the hell are you thinking? You leave the house for half a year, enjoying yourself at your parents' home? Get a grip! Mason ranted on, then spread his arms out as if to say, I can't believe this. Look, I'll give you a break this time, right? Just come home, I'm willing to turn a blind eye, this time. Mason spoke so condescendingly. I calmly retorted, I think you're confused. You and I are strangers now, you know. Mason's face went blank, then turned beet red with rage. He started yelling again. What the hell are you saying? Did you lose your mind? We're married, aren't we? Stop messing around. His intense outburst silenced me for a moment, and he kept yelling. I'm saying I'll forgive you this time, so stop fooling around and pack your bags. At that moment, my own anger boiled over. He talks like he's doing me a favor by forgiving me, as if I've done something wrong. That infuriated me even more. Moreover, it seemed Mason had no clue what had happened in the last 6 months. Finally, I snapped at Mason, who was still yelling away. I received divorce papers from your mother, signed them, and already filed them with the court, so we're not married anymore, got it? We're strangers. Total strangers. Understand? I emphasized the word strangers, and Mason looked at me, his face drained of color. He seemed genuinely shocked. Here's what happened. A month after I moved back to my parents' home, my then mother-in-law, Helen, called me to a cafe near our house. We had never been close, and I hadn't seen her for a while. After brief pleasantries, she handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked, tilting my head. Open it. Even you will understand, she said. In response, I opened an envelope and pulled out the paper inside. It was a divorce petition, already signed and stamped by Mason. Confused, I looked at Helen. The eyes of his mother, who was glaring at me, were the same as Mason's, full of disdain. While putting the divorce petition back into the envelope, I asked his mother. So, is this Mason's doing? I asked her. Did he say anything to you about this? Helen let out an exaggerated sigh before answering. Oh, yes, he said plenty. Would you like to hear? I smiled at her and replied, Yes, please go ahead. She launched into her story. According to her, Mason had been bad-mouthing me for a while now, saying that I was a useless and incompetent wife, who stopped doing any housework after we got married, that I quit my job and lazed around at home all day, and that whenever something didn't go my way, I would run back to my parents and act like a spoiled child. Helen's eyes never left mine as she spoke, and it was clear she believed every word of Mason's lies. There was no point in arguing with her, I thought. When she was done talking, Helen finally asked, So, what are you going to do? Not that I want to meddle, but you're being pretty awful, you know. By the time I walked out of that house, my mind was made up. I smiled and told her, if he wants a divorce, then that's what he'll get. Helen glared at me one last time, slapped some money on the table for her share, and walked out of the cafe. I went straight to my parents' house, signed the divorce papers, and submitted them to the court the very next day. While I was explaining all of this, Mason's face turned increasingly pale. It seemed he hadn't been informed by Helen at all, but honestly, I didn't care. After all, I had already entrusted Helen with the signed divorce papers. Mason must have had the same idea in mind, I figured. Once I finished telling my side, Mason blurted out in a panic. No, you've got it all wrong. I only filled out those divorce papers to keep my mom off my back. I never intended to submit them. They're invalid. Panicked or just confused, he started making no sense. And besides, you're the one who will suffer if we divorce, so let's go to the court right now and have them withdrawn. I gave Mason a cold stare, then tilted my head. Why would it be a problem for me if we got divorced? Mason suddenly grinned as if he had won. Think about your age. At your age with a divorce history, no one will want you. That's why I'm saying I'll take you back. This is for your benefit. You get it? I'm saying we can pretend the divorce never happened and you should be happy. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at his arrogance and delusional thinking. Listen, we're not kids. A divorce doesn't just get erased, and for the record, I'm already married to someone else. Mason's jaw dropped and he went silent. What? Really? Do you want me to repeat myself? I'm married to someone else. Mason, who had a look of disbelief, suddenly started making a fuss. That's a lie. You're just trying to look good, aren't you? You're making up stories to get me to go away, aren't you? You're really making a fool out of me, you know that? Such lies won't work. Well, if he wants to be a fool, that's his problem. As I was wondering how to explain to this idiot, a presence came from behind me and a man appeared at the entrance. The man looked at me and Mason alternately, looking confused. Mason, for his part, was surprised to see a stranger coming out of my parents' home and fell silent. When I looked at the man, he tilted his head and asked, "Is something wrong?" Feeling awkward, I smiled and turned to Mason. "This is my husband, Noah." Noah greeted Mason with a slight skeptical nod. Mason took a step back and looked up at Noah. It made sense. Noah was a former national rugby player with an imposing physique. Overwhelmed by Noah's appearance, Mason suddenly started to make excuses. No, you've got it all wrong. My old boss told me, you've been married for about a year now and your wife might start to get a little uncomfortable. Better put her in her place. So I did. And guess what? Turns out he got dumped by his wife and kids. What a fool, right? I was just doing what he told me to do. I never wanted to do any of that stuff. You understand, right, Olivia? I looked at Mason with a gaze filled with disgust, fed up with his pathetic excuses. Mason looked puzzled, maybe because my reaction wasn't what he expected. Then Noah spoke up. Sorry, but could you leave immediately and never come back here? If you approach Olivia again, I'll call the police. As he said this, Noah firmly pushed Mason out of the doorway. Intimidated by Noah's force and determination, Mason fled the scene. For a while, we both remained wary, concerned that Mason might harbor a grudge and do something irrational. But days turned into weeks and we never heard from him again. One day, curiosity got the best of me, and I reached out to a mutual friend to inquire about Mason. We began by catching up on casual topics, but when I asked about Mason, our friend sighed and filled me in. Surprisingly, Mason had quit his job just a few days after showing up at my parents' house. The reason? Turns out Mason was always in agreement with his boss, who he trusted. When the boss harassed subordinates at work, it became a big issue in the company. As a result, the boss was resigned. Resigned being a euphemism. He was basically demoted to some remote mountainous area I'd never heard of. Apparently, Mason was expected to be transferred as well, but he quit out of pride. According to our friend, he's still jobless. He's been looking for work, but his arrogance has hindered his efforts. Even when recruiters offer him opportunities, he declines interviews. Furthermore, news of him quitting reached his mother, who then disowned him due to her own extreme personality. Finally, our friend said, he blames everything on his old manager and just drowns his sorrows every day. At this rate, he'll ruin his health before he ever finds another job. It's a mess. I hope he finds a new spouse or something, though that's unlikely. We both chuckled as we hung up the phone. Mason seems to be drowning his days in job hunting and drinking. Thanks to him, I am now living a peaceful life with Noah. Interestingly, Noah was actually my colleague. Upon hearing about my divorce, he had eagerly pursued me. Though we started dating with only 6 months after my divorce, which made me somewhat hesitant, I was quickly drawn to his confident manner and kind personality. After getting married, Noah told me that he had always had a crush on me and he was heartbroken when I got married. I laughed and apologized for not noticing his feelings sooner. Noah helps me around the house, a task I used to handle alone. Whenever we eat together, he always says how delicious the food is with a smile. It's these little things that make me incredibly happy, something I never expected. I was probably numb to it all, having grown up with old-fashioned parents. Now I am living a sparkling married life with Noah, who always delights in even the most ordinary things. I'm convinced that with him, I'll have a happy life all the way through our golden years, and so I was certain.
Are you seriously thinking that I genuinely like you? Huh? I was not loved by Mike. I felt dizzy as this harsh reality hit me. Mike, seeing my condition, added insult to injury with his harsh words. All I wanted was a wife to do household chores because I'm busy at work every day. And yet you had to go and get hospitalized with your weak heart. A middle-aged woman with a frail body. What a joke to think about staying married. Huh. I felt the world around me darken, but then I remembered something I had seen earlier. With that, I have nothing to fear. With this thought, I regained my composure and retorted to Mike, Fine by me. I have a powerful ally on my side. So, letting go of someone like Mike is not a loss for me. However, I decided to take revenge on Mike, who used me mercilessly and even rekindled his relationship with his ex-girlfriend while I was hospitalized. I'm Kate, a 45-year-old housewife, married not long ago. Until my mid-40s, my life was simple, just shuttling between home and work. My only pleasures were occasional drinks and shopping, and buying a lottery ticket as a yearly ritual, hoping for happiness someday. That's when I stumbled upon a dating app for people in their 40s. I'd attended matchmaking parties before, but never found the right one. So, I started this app with a light heart, never dreaming it would lead me to my current husband. He was 3 years older than me, named Mike. A department head in a large corporation with over 1,000 employees, earning an impressive $100,000 a year. He seemed serious, a hard worker. Curious why such a great guy was still single, I casually asked him on our first date. He shyly smiled and replied, I've been too busy with work to have much of a chance to meet someone. Being the department head must indeed be busy. But at this age, feeling lonely, Mike decided to try the dating app. His shy response seemed so bright and attractive to me. I might have started falling for Mike from that moment. He seemed to like me too, saying, Honestly, I never thought I'd find real connections through an app, but I'm glad I met a woman like Kate. No, it's me who's thankful. I almost gave up on meeting anyone at my age. I never imagined finding someone as wonderful as you through this app. We both felt our meeting was a miracle and smiled at each other. It didn't take long for us to consider marriage. Half a year after meeting, we got married. On the eve of our marriage registration. Is this the last time? I bought a lottery ticket, thinking it might be my last as a single woman. Right after our wedding, Mike made a request. I'm busy with work, so sharing household chores isn't really an option. I'd like you, Kate, to quit your job and stay home. Well, my mom was a housewife too, so focusing on household chores isn't a problem for me. I agreed to his request and quit my job upon marriage. Then came the joyful days of married life. Mike, happily eating my homemade meals, saying they're delicious. Those days of lonely meals felt like a lie. But little did I know that happiness would be so fleeting. Within a month of marriage, Mike's attitude changed dramatically. Initially, he'd come straight home after late work, but lately, he often returns past midnight. Even when I wait with dinner ready, I already ate, don't need it. He says, I wish he told me sooner. I'd silently clean up the prepared meal, feeling hurt. On the rare occasions he ate at home, he'd complain about the dishes. Tired from work and you serve me grilled salmon? My least favorite. How can I eat this? Make a meat dish. But there's no meat today. I'll make a meat dish tomorrow. Please bear with it today. If there's none, go buy some. I want meat. Make it now. Despite the late hour, I had to rush to the nearly closing supermarket to buy meat. Mike's arrogance wasn't just about meals. No matter how carefully I cleaned, he always complained. Tall Mike would run his finger along high places like the top of a large bookshelf. You still left dust here, he would bellow. He pointed out spots I couldn't reach without a stool, as if to harass me for being short. I can't reach such high places often. I'll do it on weekends, so please don't point it out every day. Even when I said that, Mike would retort with a look of disdain. Leaving high places dusty until the weekend, huh? Sure, people really are useless. His belittling of my height hurt me, but I couldn't talk back, not knowing what he'd say next. So I had to endure silently, no matter what he said. Taking advantage of this, Mike complained about every household chore I did. He would just lie around, always claiming to be tired. I had thought him kind at first, but his true nature was gradually showing. Still, I told myself that this was what marriage was, especially having married at this age. Lately, though, I've been feeling strange palpitations and pain around my chest. What's happening to me? Well, it should pass soon. I worried about the discomfort in my chest, but neglected it for a while. Perhaps that was a mistake. My condition worsened, with severe breathlessness and dizziness. Unable to bear it, I decided to seek medical help. The symptoms turned out to be from a stress-induced heart condition. The constant mental stress was severely damaging my health. I had to be hospitalized. Preparing for hospitalization, I returned home to inform Mike, but instead of concern, he frowned and said, "What? A long hospitalization? What about the house? Who's going to do the chores?" "I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Please manage with takeout or deli food. Laundry can be done with the dryer, and I don't think it'll get too dirty with just you." "Hey, are you saying I have to do all the chores? That's impossible. I'm too busy." "I'm sorry. It's just until I'm discharged." I pleaded desperately, but Mike remained sullen. "Great. A half-wit who can only do chores now needs hospitalization? Really useless. Remember this when you get back." Mike hurled insults at me as I began to prepare for hospitalization alone. I felt guilty, as if I was running away from the situation, though I knew it wasn't my fault. The next morning, still sullen, Mike went to work without seeing me off. Alone, I headed to the hospital with my belongings. Mike never visited me in the hospital. I had brought everything, suspecting he wouldn't come. The hospital room felt incredibly lonely. To distract myself, I surfed the internet on my mobile. That's when I received an odd message. It was from Mike, but the content left me stunned. "Betty, I love you. I'll be off work soon. Wait for me." I was about to mark it as read when it suddenly showed, "Message deleted." Who is Betty? It was a gentle message, unlike any he'd sent me. Could Mike be having an affair? As the anxiety crossed my mind, my chest began to hurt sharply. I hastily pressed the nurse call button. Fortunately, it was a mild attack, and the pain subsided in about 5 minutes following the nurse's instructions. The nurse advised, "Stress is bad for you. Think of something pleasant." But I had no idea what to think about. Then I remembered the lottery ticket I bought before getting married. The draw was yesterday. I checked the official website on my mobile for a bit of relief. I was shocked to see, "Congratulations on your win," on the page. No way, really? I was counting the amount, excited, when the door opened, and Mike walked in. Behind him was an unfamiliar woman, maybe in her early 30s, flashy in appearance. "Hey, how are you?" Mike spoke to me casually. "How can I be fine? I'm hospitalized. Plus, you haven't shown your face here even once." "Of course. Who do you think has been busy because of you? I had a hard time with work and chores." Mike, as usual, only cared about his own troubles, indifferent to my condition. I replied with a puzzled expression. "Oh, I see. Sorry for the trouble." Unfazed by my displeasure, Mike smirked and replied, "Really? Kate, you're so charmless. Well, it's okay. From now on, I don't have to worry about being inconvenienced. You can stay in the hospital as long as you like." What do you mean?" Mike's words filled me with unease again. Then, Mike, with an arrogant look, put his arm around the shoulder of the woman behind him and said, "Because she'll be taking care of me now. Right, Betty?" Betty was the name in the earlier message. She smiled while snuggling up to Mike. Who is she? That woman. You're surprised, huh? Since you're useless, I contacted Betty, my ex-girlfriend. She still likes me, so she came right away. Mike boasted about it. I tried to stay calm and asked, "Oh, an old acquaintance came to help? Sorry for the inconvenience. I need to stay in the hospital a bit longer." Mike and Betty burst into laughter at my words. Is this woman a bit crazy? She doesn't understand anything. Well, can't be helped. She hadn't had a man until her mid-40s. Mike and Betty looked at me with mocking eyes. I understood very well what was happening. They were having an affair. I wanted to say that, but it would only strain my heart more. So I responded calmly, but Mike said something outrageous. Anyway, I don't need a weak middle-aged woman anymore. From now on, I'll be with Betty. He said this while presenting me with divorce papers. He wanted to divorce me. I couldn't hide my shock, even though I tried to stay calm. Why? You're with your ex-girlfriend whom you once broke up with. You married me, and now you want to get back together? I asked Mike that, and he replied with a look of disgust. Do you seriously think I genuinely liked you? Huh? I was never loved by Mike. I felt dizzy as this harsh reality hit me. Mike, seeing my condition, added insult to injury. That's why. All I wanted was a wife to do household chores because I'm busy at work every day. And yet, you had to go and get hospitalized with your weak heart. A middle-aged woman with a frail body. What a joke to think about staying married. Huh. The world around me grew even darker. But then I remembered something I had seen earlier. With that, I have nothing to fear. With this thought, I regained my composure and retorted to Mike, Fine by me. Mike was surprised by my unexpected reaction. Huh? You're really okay with this? You have nowhere to go without me. Don't pretend to be tough. I'm not pretending. Just make sure to file those divorce papers properly. I signed the divorce papers handed to me and returned them to Mike. Alright, I'll take care of it. I'll submit them tomorrow. Mike said this, but still looked puzzled. Betty stared at me with disdain and smirked. I thought you'd resist more, given your dire situation. But you can't compete with my youth and beauty, can you? That's right. I'm proud to have Betty, the popular one at the club, all to myself. I always thought a woman like her would dump an older guy like me. I was always loyal to Mike, even when I was the most popular at that club. Let's submit our marriage application as soon as the divorce papers are filed. Club? Popular? At my reaction, Mike quickly covered his mouth. So, he'd been going to such places while pretending to work hard. Now I remember him coming home drunk, claiming to have worked overtime. His late returns after dinner seemed suspicious. Seeing my doubtful face, Betty exclaimed, Who cares? Anyway, Mike and I are getting together. Middle-aged women are useless. With that, Betty grabbed Mike's arm and left. Mike decided to remarry his affair partner while I suffered in the hospital. I couldn't forgive Mike. Even though I'd feel relieved after the breakup, I planned to take revenge first. After that, I quietly recovered in the hospital room and finally got permission to be discharged. With Mike remarrying and moving to Betty's apartment, I was left to live alone in our former home. When I returned home, I immediately headed to the lottery headquarters to cash in my winning ticket. It would take about a week to receive the money. During that time, I searched online for a good lawyer. I wanted to investigate Mike's past relationships with women, especially with Betty. Was their relationship really over before we got married? If it had continued, I could claim compensation. Once the lottery money was secured, I found a lawyer and asked for an investigation. It turned out that Mike had indeed continued his relationship with Betty. Betty had previously worked in a nightclub, and as Mike said, she was popular there. They had been together since then, and their relationship never really ended. So, Mike had married me while continuing his affair, treating me more like a housekeeper. This thought enraged me, but I had to stay calm, not wanting to worsen my health. I wanted to confront Mike and demand compensation, but I decided to leave everything to my lawyer and wait. Soon, Mike called me. "Hey, why did a lawyer suddenly show up demanding compensation for your alleged affair?" "Well, just do as the lawyer says. Otherwise, I'm ready to take it to court." "Shut up. Where did you get the money to hire a lawyer? Courts cost money, too. You spent a lot on hospital bills, didn't you?" Mike was oblivious to the fact that I had money, but his unnecessary comment would backfire on him. "That's true. You didn't even pay for my hospital bills while we were married. The lawyer said I could claim those expenses from you." Ugh. Mike's careless words had turned the situation in my favor. He was speechless. From the other end of the phone, "Let me talk to her." I heard a woman's voice. It must have been Betty listening in. "Hey, do you even have the right to claim compensation? You just got sick and neglected your husband. I was the one who took care of him. So if anyone deserves compensation, it's me." "That's right. Exactly." Mike, emboldened by having Betty by his side, sounded triumphant, but I remained calm and replied, "Didn't the lawyer tell you? The investigation already confirmed that Mike continued his affair with Betty even after our marriage. I hired a competent lawyer, so there's no escaping this." "Stop bluffing. You keep saying that, but you don't have the money." "That reminds me, Mike. Despite your high income, you only gave me $1.7 a month for living expenses. I struggled to manage rent, high utility bills, and groceries with that. That might also qualify for compensation, don't you think?" Yes, Mike had always treated me horribly. No matter what he said now, it only dug his grave deeper. If we went to court, it was clear I had the upper hand. I had meticulously kept a household budget app, which would serve as evidence. Mike still thought I was just bluffing. "A competent lawyer, huh? That's a lie. Your lawyer must be nothing special. I won't be fooled." Hearing that, I sent Mike the webpage of the law firm I found online. "I hired this law firm. You have their business card, right?" The webpage featured photos of the lawyer who was helping me. Mike must have been surprised to see it. "This is a pretty famous law firm, isn't it? Where did you get the money to hire them?" Mike's voice sounded panicked, so I decided it was time to reveal the truth. "Actually, I won $500,000 in the lottery this year." "Huh?" My words seemed to have surprised Mike and Betty. "You're lying, right? I never heard about you buying a lottery ticket." "I bought it with my own money before I married you. So it's not something I needed to report to you, is it?" After I answered, there was a moment of silence. Then Mike, sounding panicked, said, "You're at home, right? I'm coming over right now." I wondered what Mike would do coming over now. About 20 minutes later, Mike arrived at my house alone. Surprisingly, he looked cheerful. "Kate, I came to talk about the division of assets." Division of assets? Mike had come happily, so I wondered what he was thinking. I was dumbfounded by his ridiculous claim. "The lottery ticket was bought before marriage, but you cashed it in after we were married, right? Doesn't that mean I'm entitled to half as shared marital property?" "Unfortunately, that won't work. I cashed it in after our divorce was finalized. And besides, the divorce was due to your infidelity." "What? Don't say that! We were once husband and wife, so give me at least a quarter." Mike pleaded desperately. I sharply rebuked him. "No way! There's no division of assets. I need to get compensation from you." "About that." Mike was again trying to come up with something that suited him. "You know I was deceived by that woman. She only approached me for my money. She worked in a nightclub, so she must have had other men, more than just me." "So what are you trying to say?" "Meaning, I'm a victim here, not really cheating. Of course I'll break up with her and never cheat again. So, can't we start over?" I was amazed at his audacity. "Do you really think that excuse will work? You definitely cheated. Look, I have plenty of evidence. I said this and laid out the photos my lawyer had collected of Mike's infidelity. The photos showed Mike with his arm around Betty, entering and exiting a hotel, and intimate scenes in a park. All were clear evidence of his infidelity. Damn, you gathered these? Mike picked up the photos, frustrated. Then, as if to add insult to injury, Betty appeared. Apparently, she had followed Mike and was hiding nearby. Hey, Mike! Who said I deceived you? You were the one crying and begging me. Betty, you heard that? It seemed like the end for Mike. Betty, having heard all of Mike's selfish reasoning, was furious. Don't look down on me because I worked in a nightclub. I've always loved Mike, even after we broke up. What will you do about these feelings? I'm sorry. Mike was now dwarfed by 2 angry women. I was so happy when you came back to me. You trampled on my feelings, so I'll ask for compensation too. Hey, why should I pay compensation to a mistress? A mistress? We were legally married, even if it was for less than a month. Well, it started as an affair. Seeing Mike's desperate face, I almost laughed. Mike, women's hearts aren't so easily swayed. Mike looked utterly disheartened by my words. It seemed like things were settling down, so I decided to call one more person who had been listening in. You can come out now. What? There's someone else here? At my call, a person from the next room entered. Hello? I've heard everything. It's that lawyer from before. Yes, this lawyer had told me to contact him anytime something happened. So when Mike said he was coming over, I immediately contacted him. The lawyer entered my house quietly through the back door and had been waiting in the next room. Mike, as Kate just told you, you have no right to any division of assets. Regarding the compensation, Betty's case will also be added, so we'll reconsider that. Upon hearing this from the lawyer, Mike was stunned into a daze. With this, everything was resolved, and I felt relieved. Afterward, I received compensation from Mike and settled the property division based on half of Mike's income during our marriage. Mike ended up divorcing Betty and now lives alone. However, his company, a strict major corporation, became aware of his infidelity and successive divorces, leading to his dismissal. It seems he had been under scrutiny by his superiors for his flashy relationships with women. This latest divorce scandal quickly leaked out. I haven't seen Mike since then, but someone informed me about his situation. It was none other than Betty, his affair partner. Betty seemed remorseful for what she had done to me and came to my house to apologize. I'm sorry. I'll work and pay the compensation for the affair, little by little. Please wait for me. Betty apologized while saying this. However, I refused the compensation from Betty. I heard she hadn't found steady employment since leaving the nightclub. Initially, she managed with her savings, but her spending habits from her nightclub days lingered, and now her savings were gone. So, she had clung to Mike, hoping to somehow get back together with him. But I know it sounds like an excuse, but I really did love Mike. Betty's eyes were sincere when she said she had always loved Mike. That's why I decided to let things go smoothly with Betty. On the other hand, Mike lost his job and, burdened with compensation to me and Betty, was in a financial crisis. He was even evicted from his apartment for failing to pay rent. Then he came to me, looking desperate. Kate, I was really wrong. Please forgive me just this once. I'll listen to anything you say from now on. Just let me stay here. I won't ask for money or anything. Mike begged pitifully, so I answered, Fine, you can stay in this house as long as you want. Really? Oh, thank you. I let Mike into the house, but that night, while he was sleeping, I packed my belongings. I had been looking for a new place and had just finalized the arrangements. By dawn, when Mike woke up, the moving truck was already there. Hey, what's going on? Why are you packing up? Where are you going? Oh, I'm moving out today. You know this house is a rental, right? You'll have to pay the rent yourself from now on. It's 1K a month. What? I can't pay that right now. You tricked me! I didn't trick you. I just said you could stay here. Good luck with the rent. Bye. I left the house saying this. Since then, I've canceled my mobile phone and made it impossible for Mike to contact me. Of course, I didn't give him my new address. Later, I ran into the owner of the house, where Mike and I lived. Apparently, Mike couldn't pay the rent and had to leave. No one knows where he went. As for me, I bought a luxurious high-rise apartment with the lottery winnings. The view of the cityscape from the window is simply stunning. I fully recovered from the stress after separating from Mike. The apartment has a fitness room on the first floor, so I exercise daily. I also adopted a Pomeranian, Mocha, who has become my dear family. But I can't just live off the lottery winnings. I enjoy working, so I decided to get rehired at the company where I worked before marriage. Coincidentally, I saw a job posting the day I moved in. They had trouble finding good staff after I left. So, when I asked to be rehired, my boss was delighted. Now, I'm enjoying an ideal lifestyle, comfortable in my new home, and familiar work environment. Though I wasn't blessed with a happy marriage, I'm looking forward to living life my way. That's the greatest happiness for me now.
I'm speechless in front of the food I've spent hours to prepare. Why would my respected brother-in-law's wife be so cruel to me? Sophia is a 27-year-old office worker with a family of 3, including my husband Tom and our 3-year-old son. Tom, who is 4 years older, and I started going out as boss and subordinate. We frequently went out for drinks together, getting close, and began dating. We continued our relationship without incident and married a year later. We got a house for our children, who are expected to have in the future, and are now enjoying happy days together. Even though everything looked going swimmingly, there was a problem in our life. That is Jack's wife, and Jack is Tom's brother. Mia is her name, and she is my brother-in-law's wife. Let me first tell you about Tom and Jack. Jack is Tom's 10-year-old older brother. Tom and his siblings lost their father in an accident when they were young. Their mother, who had previously been a housewife, got depressed as a result of the shock. Even when she regained some of her strength and was able to return to work, she could only work part-time because she had previously been a full-time housewife. As a result, Jack, who was a college student at that time, dropped out and went to work to support his family's finances. Jack said, "I want Tom to go to college properly." And he worked hard without complaining. Tom was able to go to college with the assistance of some scholarship and work at his current company because of Jack. Jack was full of happiness when Tom and I went to greet for our marriage my mother-in-law and Jack. Tom also expressed his gratitude to Jack on every occasion. And at the wedding ceremony, he expressed his gratitude to Jack with tears, when he said, "If you weren't my brother, I wouldn't be here today." The room was filled with tears. Jack has never said to Tom with an air of condescension. He was always generous, cheerful, and thoughtful to my husband and me. However, after we got a house and started living near Jack and his family, Mia frequently told me, "You should be thankful to my husband." Jack's job keeps him very busy, and he frequently has to go on long business trips and stay overnight to work overtime. Mia always comes to our house on these occasions. Jack and Mia live about a 5-minute walk away, and she always drops by without an appointment. They always come to our house to eat and bathe their children, then let me to take care of them, before returning to the house, being ready for bed. She is also very selfish, saying things like, "I'm not in the mood for Western food today, so please make it Japanese," or "My child wants a hamburger steak today, so please cook it," and so on. We couldn't insist on strongly, though because she was the wife of Jack, to whom we had been indebted to. Tom, don't you remember that thanks to Jack, you were able to go to college and got into a famous company? Because of you, Jack only graduated from high school and is having a hard time getting ahead in his current company. If he had graduated from college, he would have had a better career. That is why you got a new house, but we have used house, so you wouldn't pay for it by doing those for us. Mia said to him when Tom once insisted on her. When she told this, Tom always gets silent and unable to respond. He objected that she might be delegating too much housework to me because she is a housewife and I work full-time. However, he is reluctant to speak about the favor he owes Jack. Sorry, but it is thanks to my brother that I'm here today, so could you please be patient and work things out with Mia? Tom asked me. I reluctantly agreed to his request. Her demands increased as a result of our attitude. Her annoying behavior was primarily divided into two categories. As I previously stated, she comes to our house to eat or bathe, and she uses me to make herself look good in front of our relatives. Our relatives are coming to our house, and I want to cook dinner for them and entertain them, she said at first. I thought that I was also going to talk with my relatives, but when I finished cooking, she kicked me out saying, "Well, our relatives will be here soon, so you should go home." When I later heard what my relatives and Mia were discussing, they talked that she had done all of the cooking and praised her for being a good cook. This didn't happen just once or twice. Every time Mia invited a relative over, she made me cook for them, sent me home. Of course, I decided dishes and prepared them, and I paid for the ingredients. Mia never even cut the ingredients for me. In addition, I was always responsible for preparing mid-year, year-end gifts and other thank you gifts for Jack's bosses and relatives who had assisted him. They were always mailed in Mia's name. She would frequently give me instruction when the time came. Jack's bosses and relatives praised her as a really attentive wife and an accomplished wife at every family gathering. You should learn from her, Sophia, I was told. I can tell you how many times I swallowed the words, "I am the one preparing." Tom and I told her, "It is still fine for us to prepare for this, but you have to pay for it. We also have people to whom we have to send mid-year and year-end gifts, so it costs many times more than it should." I explained to Mia, but she refused to listen. "Isn't it cheap compared to what Jack has sacrificed? Jack covered your tuition and living expenses." "You are aware of this, correct? How can you claim about money only from a year-end or mid-year gift?" she told Tom. She accused me, saying, "You know, Jack will be prized when he is said, 'I'm a good wife because of the details I put into these things.' That's the same as Tom repaying Jack's kindness, right? A wife who doesn't help her husband to repay his kindness is the worst. Besides, since I noticed the timing of such gifts precisely, you won't forget them either." Mia is quarrelsome in this way, and she uses Jack's favor for Tom to give us orders. We were in charge of all seasonal letters and New Year's cards, as well as mid-year and year-end gifts. If something bad happened, she'd say, "Tom has become a great man because of Jack," as if it were cliché. Furthermore, she says things like, "Rather, you should ask us if you want to do it without telling you." I was mortified as I checked the expenses for every month and every event. Then, the decisive event occurred. Mia asked me to prepare a meal for a dinner party for about 20 of our relatives at her house during the summer event. For summer and New Year's, our relatives frequently gather at someone's home, usually at the home of a more senior relative. Mia, on the other hand, said, "Please come to our house." Her relatives were overjoyed because they knew she was a great cook and a thoughtful woman. However, she expected me to do all of the preparation. Tom had another commitments on that day, so I couldn't ask him to help. When I asked, how she planned to pay for it. He said we'd have to do it ourselves. Preparing food and drinks for 20 people is a significant drain on our family finances. I told her that we should at least split the bill, but she refused that. She said, as usual, Jack has been put through a lot of hardship, so he deserves at least that much. When I told her that, at the very least, discuss it with your brother-in-law, she screamed at me. I will not forgive you if you do that. Jack is currently busy with his work. Are you returning kindness with ingratitude? I was at my limit. However, the day of the dinner party was getting closer. I looked at Mia, but she didn't look being in a hurry or being preparing in any way. I had no choice but to begin planning for the event several days in advance. I had also been making some behind-the-scenes preparations. The day of the dinner came. I began preparations early in the morning and finished them a few hours before the meeting time, despite being exhausted. Mia came to check on me after all of the preparations were completed. Mia, all preparations have been completed, and I believe they can come at any time now, I told her. Then, looking at the dishes on the table, Mia exclaimed, What are you doing? Food should be eel rice, isn't it? She got perplexed. But you didn't tell me to prepare eel rice, I replied. You should know that. It's so embarrassing. Our relatives is gathering for the summer festival, and they believe I can't even prepare eel rice. Please place your order for the eel rice right away. No, I've already prepared enough food for everyone, and the fish I purchased is fresh, so I haven't prepared such an embarrassing dish, I replied. It has to be eel rice, Mia insisted. She refused to listen to me. She also insisted that we order the special one for all of us with our own money. When I asked her to pay for it, she said she'd never do it. I couldn't take it any longer and protested what I had done once more. I told her that whenever she invited her relatives over, she made me cook for them, and that she came to our house every day when Jack was not there. Also that we prepared all the gifts, including mid-year and year-end gifts, and about today. Mia responded by talking about Jack's gratitude, so I made another revelation here. Mia, you even had an affair with someone you met on dating app or something, didn't you? You are a housewife, but you leave a lot of things to me. So I was curious what you were doing, so I looked into it, I replied. Oh, so you knew about it, but I'm afraid you don't have any proof. I'm handling well with that, and it doesn't matter. You're doing me a favor by cooperating with me, so it's like you're returning the favor, she responded with a laugh. Mia was unconcerned, despite the fact about the affair had been revealed. On the contrary, she brought up what Jack has done for Tom once again and said, You will repay our family for the rest of your lives. At this point, I was silent and removed food in silence. I'm leaving. I will never return, I said as I packed my belongings and left. Mia was yelling something about ordering some eel rice first or something from behind me, but I ignored her and left. Some minutes later, I received phone call repeatedly from Mia on my phone. When I was forced to respond, she exclaimed, What? What the hell is going on? She sounds panicked. Is there something wrong? I asked her deliberately. I have so many inquiries. She made a great fuss. She continued, I rearranged the dishes you made, and I ordered eel rice because I had no choice and paid for it with my own money. But none of my relatives came, and it appears that they know everything we were discussing earlier. I couldn't stop laughing. I was also surprised that she rearranged the food I had brought down. The reality is as follows. I couldn't take Mia's arrogance any longer. Mia was going to criticize me, but I thought if I talked to Jack honestly, he'd give me good advice. I also assumed that if it were Jack, he would not say something like, "Have you forgotten how much I owe you?" When Jack listened to me, he didn't seem to believe me. Mia always gave good face for her relatives, but she also pretended the perfect wife for Jack. When Jack returned home from work, she made him a hot meal with showing him smile, despite the fact that those food was the one we still wanted to eat the next day. She brought a large amount of food from our house arrogantly. She also told Jack that they frequently invited me to dinner, but she told Jack not to tell him because they didn't want Jack to be bothered, Mia explained to Jack. She never told him that I was involved in any of the gifts, but always told him with a smile, "It is natural for a wife to do such details to save her husband's face." Jack was always even impressed, saying, "I got a wife who is too good for me." As a result, Jack lost his words when he listened to my story. Jack is a good man, so he didn't say I was lying, but he did think, there must be some misunderstanding between us. So I considered how I could show him the proof. "Well, will you allow me to get the evidence?" I requested Jack's permission. First and foremost, I decided to record the usual conversations when Mia visited our house. I recorded the conversations in which she was selfish about food. And she said that we had no right to speak back to her if we considered Jack's kindness to us. I recorded the conversation and asked Jack to listen to them. When he listened to them, he lost his words. She also informed Jack that she and I intended to work together to prepare a dinner party for her relatives. So I got his permission to record that day. From the point where I was preparing the meal for the relatives, and to the point where Mia was ranting about ordering eel rice with my money and admitting the affair, I was connected to Jack and his relatives via video call. I had informed my family ahead that we would connect the video call at this time on this day. This was how Jack and his relatives learned the truth about Mia. After I left, relatives called Mia and said, "I can't believe Sophia had prepared all of the year-end and mid-year gifts until now, taking advantage of Jack's kindness and even adultery. Shame on my relatives." They were bombarded with allegations. Mia attempted to deal with the situation using her ready tongue, but the evidence caused her to slur. The majority of her relatives told her, "I'm cutting ties with you," and hung up the phone, leaving Mia stunned. Jack, who had said he would be a little late for work that day, came home, told Mia what had happened, and asked her what was going on. He later told me, "I am disappointed," he said. When he told Mia that you had caused problems for my dear younger brother and his wife while I was not there, and that you even had an affair, she burst into tears. She told him that she harassed me because she didn't like the fact that I was young and that his brother and me had a nicer house than she did. She also claimed that she was having an affair because she was lonely due to he was not at home often. She claimed that after hearing Tom read a thank you letter to Jack at the wedding, she devised a plan to make them to feel owe him and force me and Tom to do what she said. I was furious that she continued to harass me for such a reason, but I also felt sorry for Jack. I worked so hard for Tom, not to make him owe me, but because he is my precious little brother. It was not for the sake of saying I did this for you back then. I'm overjoyed that he's now working for a good company and developing into a wonderful person. And I'm sorry Mia thinks my salary isn't very good. But that's not Tom's fault. It's my lack of effort, he explained to Mia. We also discovered that she had left their children at home while seeing her adulterous partner. And Jack intended to divorce and give him alimony and custody. Mia was up in arms, claiming that she did not want a divorce. She agreed to a slight reduction in alimony in exchange for him properly divorcing and giving him custody. The affair was discovered by her partner's spouse, who also sought full alimony. Mia returned to her parents' house and worked several part-time and day jobs in order to pay the double alimony and child support. Mia was looking disheveled when he met Mia a few months later for a visit to see his child. Jack later apologized to us and paid for the ingredients and alcohol on the day of the dinner party. He also promised to pay for the meals Mia had eaten at our house and the gifts she had made us prepare for her. But Tom and I talked about it and told Jack that we were done with that money. I apologized to Jack because while this incident was intended to avenge Mia, it also brought shame him to his family. I don't think Mia would have felt remorse if I hadn't done that much, Jack laughed. If anything, I am an unfit husband for not noticing Mia's behavior until now, he said, looking sad. Jack is currently saving his work and caring for the child. We keep in touch with Jack, and on days when he is unable to make, we care for his child at our home or invite him over for dinner. If I didn't have to hear phrases like, "Do you have gratitude to Jack?" we could get along and have a better relationship. We learned a lesson that there are people who make you feel a lot. Even though it is not a favor you gave, Tom and I laugh.